Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Municipal Building Design Committee. Let me go ahead and read all of our standard language here. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. The recording of this meeting will be available on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at this meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Public participation is encouraged, and public comments may be welcome during committee member discussions at the discretion of the chair. All right. So before we go into public comments, just a couple of notes about who's in attendance and some house cleaning stuff. So from the committee, we have Mr. Roy with us this evening. We have Mr. Leighton with us, and we have Ms. Messidas with us, and myself, Michael Ray Jeffries. We are still waiting for a couple other members to join in. I'm aware that Mr. Blatt is not going to be able to join us this evening. We're aware that Mr. Leighton needs to step out at 6, so I'm trusting that between now and then we will have another member join in with us so we can hold on to our quorum for this evening, and that would be either Mr. Gray or Mr. Allison. All right, we're going to go ahead and start on public comments. Do we have any public comments this evening from the committee or board? We're going to get to the public in a moment, Mr. Weaver. I'm sorry, why did I call you Mr. Weaver? Probably because I keep running into Mr. Weaver in the center of town, Mr. Walker. All right, any public comments from our APDC rep?
No.
All right, and now from the public, Mr. Walker.
Well, I also have to leave at 6. I have a PAC meeting, so if there's anything PAC specific, if you could squeeze it in, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, hearing any other public comments this evening. All right, seeing no additional requests for public comment. Oh, and I just did something weird on my side, so hold on for a sec. All right. Again, good evening. So we are here tonight to meet with Taylor and Burns, as well as with the support team that we have with us. I do see some representation from the engineering team that assisted this project. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robert, Mr. Taylor. We are looking here today to get an update on where we're at, a preview of tomorrow night's presentation with the select board, and then after we hear from Mr. Taylor and his team, and they drop off, we'll have a brief conversation about the warrant article that's leading out of this, as well as some key updates here. All right, so Mr. Taylor and team, good to see you and good to have you with us this evening.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody again. And we thought that we might need about 30 minutes because we have a few new items. There is heating and ventilation, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, engineering being represented tonight by Bill Scanlon of BLW Engineers. He's here to describe his work, and also Paul Rosenstrauch from Simpson Gumper Hager, SGH Engineering, to talk about structural. And we also have a cost estimate, which was finalized today. So in the interest of getting to everybody, I'm going to step up the pace of what we had originally planned to do so we can get this done in the 30 minutes that we have. And I'm going to ask if you can share your screen, Michael Ray Jeffries, with Marley Lynch.
Actually, you could share that with me. I'm going to be hosting the presentation.
Oh, there you go. Stephen. Okay. So just for introductions, Bill, do you want to say a word, and Paul, about you guys?
So I'm Bill Scanlon with BLW Engineers. We're the MEP consultants working with Robert and his team. And like Robert had said, we'll kind of give you a little bit of what we see or what we expect for systems for both buildings.
Paul Rosenstrauss. I'm the structural project engineer for these buildings. I'll be joined shortly by Dominic Kelly, who I believe you've met before. He has a prior meeting that's wrapping up.
Thanks, guys. So we'll start with the site plan because it's always best to start with the overall. And the agenda that we have is to talk about the site plan and then the buildings themselves, and look at building plans, look at exterior and interior perspectives, and then HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and structural, and cost estimate. So it's a lot to get through. We're going to try to move it along here. On site plan, this is, I hope at this point, familiar to most of you. As you can see in the plan on the left-hand side of your screen, the relationship between the streets of Lunenburg and the proposed project, with parking of 80 spaces on School Street. The proposed addition to the Ritter Memorial on the west side of the Ritter, and the old town hall, future meeting house up on Main Street. And zeroing in on the plan on the right, you can see how the various pieces all go together with parking and walkways. And the question has come up from Tony Scalabrini in the past about, is this really the right side for the building to be putting an addition on the west side of the Ritter Memorial? And I wanted to address that with just a few observations. That we believe that the program of the new town hall is really too large of a footprint to be accommodated on the east side of the Ritter. It would be quite crowded against the sidewalk and the street, Lancaster Avenue. There'd be no real area for parking near that side of the building. And so there's that. I think it would crowd the Ritter. It would not be the best fit for the Ritter Memorial to have a big addition like that on its east side. It's also almost twice the distance from the parking on School Street. And, as Americans, we drive as close as we can to where we want to go, and then we'll take the shortest path from our car to our destination. And the footpath from the parking lot on School Street to what would be the front door of a new wing east of Ritter is over 600 feet, twice the distance of what it would be to where we had been proposing to put the town hall. And a third point is that I think that the Ritter building, although it's lovely, it has a main floor level that is elevated about 6 feet above grade, which made a lot of sense in 1910 with people's understanding of who had the right to go into public buildings. But we don't think that way today. And we would be locking ourselves into those floor levels without really enough distance to navigate a change in grade like we have when we put the building on the west side. So there's that. A fourth reason is that the 1965 addition to the Ritter Memorial is about 1,500 square feet. And our cost estimate came in today indicating the cost per square foot for new construction is almost $600 a square foot. So that represents right there approximately $900,000 worth of real estate, usable real estate that the town of Lunenburg owns if you had to build it today. And I think to tear it down would be a misuse of valuable real estate. And also, I guess it goes against an adage that I follow, which is, the greenest building is the one that's already standing. And that building is right there, ready to use. And the way we're planning with our design to reutilize the 1965 wing, I think is a very great approach to it. So I just wanted to start out with that. And I know some will disagree with us, but we do have our reasons for doing what we did. So next, in the interest of time, we'll go to the floor plans. And Stephen Lauder will talk us through these. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks, Robert. So this floor plan is pretty similar to the one that we've seen and shown for the last couple meetings here, just with further reactions to public comment and the people who will be using the building, such as the school and the town hall. They've had their input on this building as well, and we've continued to adjust based on their understanding of spaces that they're going to be needing and inhabiting currently. So I'm going to zoom in here on the north end of the new town hall building. As you enter in, there's a staircase on your right side, and you move past that towards the principal assessor's room. We'll take a look at this area later on in a perspective view, and we've seen that in the past meetings as well. About halfway down the hall here, so there's plenty of room for a small queue to form of about 5 to 6 people, which is normal based on what we've gotten from feedback. There's areas for transaction counters so that people don't have to come directly into these rooms to interact with those people running those services. As we move further into the building, there's a core of an elevator and a staircase that can navigate down below to the basement where the PAC will be, and up to the second floor where most of the building-centric program will be in the town hall. As we move down towards the southern end of this building, back towards the new parking lot on School Street, there is a side entry that you can also enter from. And so this is the typical entry for pedestrian parking in the lower parking lot on School Street. And the main entry is for people who would be walking or parking in the town center. And it's more of a focus on the town front as people drive by on Main Street. In this back area here, we have the treasurer and the accounting bullpen. And so this has multiple transaction counters and also a small hallway where a queue can form and use this transaction counter. And if this queue gets too long, there's a second transaction counter here that can be overviewed by the treasurer, town accountants, payroll clerk, and everybody in that bullpen to more quickly operate. Also on this lower floor, we have the assistant town clerk, and the town clerk has their own private office within that bullpen. They have direct access to the vault. This vault is also used by the people in the accounting and treasurer bullpen and this whole area over here. So they have direct access from across the hall to be able to use that vault. Moving towards the east, we have the facilities manager, and they have their own private office with an area for storage. The Parks and Rec office is also on this floor, adjacent to the Veterans Affairs office. Veterans Affairs office had requested use or seating in a waiting area outside, which has been accommodated here in this plan. There is a ramp in this building that connects the new town hall and the existing Ritter building. The existing Ritter building will be the home of the school offices. On this lower floor, it's mostly special services with a centrally located ACE kitchen and laundry center. Most of the ACE program is up on this wing, which is the 60s edition that's currently staying there today that Robert had just talked about. In this area, the main change is there was a meeting room in the back of this area up against the existing large window. And through the request of the superintendent, that has been removed to better suit the needs of the ACE program with smaller meeting areas and a large open space for group meetings and group activities. This area is also serviced by a new stair that will accommodate the change in grade, and also a limited use Lula lift or elevator. Moving up to the second floor, I'm going to zoom in on the north half again over here. As you come up the main stair next to that main entry, there's a waiting area that could also be expanded in the future for more offices. Directly adjacent to that is the Board of Health office. Moving southerly down the corridor, we have a building commissioner suite, which was largely influenced by a request drawn out by the building commissioner. And this space suits exactly what their needs are for a potential expansion where this record room could eventually become an office space and also an interior waiting area. The planning department and conservation bullpen is also accessed through a waiting area that brings people off of that main hallway. So there will be less queues and less people waiting in the hallway directly, and also gives them a place to sit down and also use transaction counters. A change that's happened recently in this plan from the last time we saw was that the conservation agent has their own private office. Originally, they were in the bullpen, but they've requested that they have access to an office space that's private for everyday use, and that has been accommodated here. Also on this floor is the town manager and the town manager's assistant and their executive assistants and other specialists in that area. They have a private conference room, which was also a request of theirs. A kitchen and coffee room is directly in the center of this plan, so it can easily be accessed by everybody on this floor and also people on the second floor in the Ritter building from the school department. This is connected again to the upper level of the Ritter building through a ramp. And on this area is utilizing a lot of the same areas that are in the existing Ritter building today, but by reimagining them with walls that actually go up to the ceilings and more private offices. So directly in the center, we have the superintendent's office, and this has a view of the reimagined courtyard space that is formed between the new town hall in the 60th edition and the Ritter building. Also on this floor, there's a greeting area with a few open desks where people who can come up that stair right here will be greeted by somebody working in this area. This is also connected to the lower level through that stair and the Lula elevator. On the new town hall side, as I mentioned before, you can also go downstairs. And so that is where the PAC building is. And so we've looked at this very similar layout in the last couple of weeks where there's a larger basement and there's some unexcavated areas to make best use of the actual square footage that is needed and also have some space for expansion and also electrical rooms and MEP rooms in this floor. So the PAC building and the PAC studio are accommodated here. I believe Marley is going to take us through some of these perspectives.
Thanks, Stephen. So from this view, this is one that may be familiar to you. We're looking at the new town hall and the existing Ritter building from the northwest on the Mass Ave side. And Robert's going to speak a little bit to some of the architecture here.
Yeah, the materials that we're recommending are familiar to you. It's clapboard, white, flat white board trims, columns, pilasters. It's, I would call it New England vernacular. And I think it's a language that is appropriate to Lunenburg, to this time and place. And we've organized it such that there is a colonnade along School Street for people walking from the parking lot. That's kind of human scaled, 8-foot tall columns. And then also double-sized pilaster columns that I think designate the building as having a certain level of civic significance that would be noticeable from people in their cars speeding along Mass Ave or people who are over by the old town hall. And it's an architectural language that you would find on the church, the town hall, other buildings of Lunenburg. And the one-story colonnade and the two-story pilasters are kind of woven together into the design of the town hall main facade. I think it's complementary to the Ritter building and its 1965 addition, and it creates a U-shaped courtyard space between those three buildings that would be, I think, a nice focal center in Lunenburg Village. Marley, can you show other views?
Sure. So this is the same view, kind of imagining it in a festive time of year and what it could look like once it's been lived in. So we just chose the 4th of July as it is a civic building to kind of represent that. And then this is a view as if you're standing just outside that colonnade. So it gives you a sense of that space, the glazed porch canopy that covers that, and then kind of the quality of light that you'd have beneath. And then this view puts you in the position of a person that's walking from the new 30 School Street parking lot. And as you approach the building, what it would look like, you could enter here through the side entry that's sort of in the center of that rendering. And that would be kind of that main access point for people that are parking in the 30 School Street lot. And then stepping inside the building, this would be the entry from the Mass Ave side, so that kind of main entry that we were looking at first. Immediately to your right is that staircase that Stephen mentioned as he was taking us through the plans, and that would bring you directly up to that upper floor with the Board of Health and some of those other building departments. And then as you continue down the hallway, we have the assessors on our right, the elevator on your left, and then other offices as you continue down to the hall. And then just past the assessor on the right would be that side entry.
The material palette that we're recommending is one that I think you'll feel is familiar. It's the lower part of the wall, the wainscoting, is natural finished wood baseboard, tongue and groove wainscoting up to a wooden chair rail. And that could be used as a kind of accent material as well in the stair hall. And then the walls are soft gray painted plaster up to the top of the door. And above that would be a panel of what we call borrowed light. It's high windows that let daylight from those offices transfer into the public corridor, but also controlling the view into the offices so you don't see the family and cat pictures of the assessor and the piles of paper that might be on desks. We can accommodate some windows next to the doors and transaction windows, but we'd be careful about just how many of those we put in. So that gives you a feel of what the interior would be. Upstairs, Marley, yeah.
I just want to interrupt briefly. So we are joined by Mr. Gray. That will enable us to maintain our quorum past 6 p.m.
I am going to step out
Thank you,
at this
Brian.
time. Thank you.
Sorry about that. My other meeting lasted longer.
It's all good. Thank you, Tom. I'm happy that you're with us. I just texted our lawyer. I was about to read what I had to do. So we're in good shape. So thank you.
That's good. Good to see you, Tom. So you haven't missed anything. We're just now beginning to look at images that you hadn't seen before. This is a second floor interior view, as if you just came out of the elevator, which is on the immediate right-hand side of this view. And you're looking down the length of the corridor toward the windows overlooking Massachusetts Avenue and the stair that goes down, the waiting area that's near those windows. And then on the left-hand side are windows looking into the building department. And same material palette of wood wainscoting, light gray walls, white plaster ceiling. I'm trying to use those glazed windows to make that corridor space feel like it has sunshine on a sunny day, and you know what time of day it is, and a feeling of transparency in local government. Next. Marley, you want to describe this one?
Sure. So this is a redevelopment of the existing 1960s edition of the Ritter Memorial. We've kind of branded it there with the Lunenburg Public Schools, and what you'll see is a new 1 to 20 sloped walkway that doesn't require any handrails. That makes the space accessible to all. And there would also be a new staircase, and that wraps around a new planting bed that reuses some of the stone from the retaining walls that currently exist there. And then over the stairwell will be a new kind of canopy, and those entry doors that you see in the distance are relocated so that they are actually accessible now, as the current configuration, they're too close to be ADA.
Right. Any questions about any of this so far?
Yeah, Mr. Allison, I think at our last meeting brought up a question about the sloping walkway and whether or not it presents as a tripping hazard, if there's a need to do anything there. Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've added a fieldstone wall and curb to protect the edge between the sloped walk and the parking lot. It's, you know, the change in grade there is from 0 to about 15 inches. It's not necessary to have a guardrail when the change of grade is less than 30 inches. We could put one in. They're, I think, maintenance trouble if don't use them if you can get away without them. But it could be added if people feel it would increase the sense of safety or security for people using the sloped walk. Any other questions? If not, we'll jump over to the meeting house, the old town hall. Stephen, can you explain the plans, please?
Sure. The meeting house plans are very similar to what we've seen before. You come in on the first floor on this left-hand side over here at the first floor, onto a regraded sidewalk that we'll show you an image of before that you've also seen before, but we'll re-show it again, where we're raising the sidewalk up so that there's no longer a step going into this building. A new pad is, or building concrete pad is poured here so that it's the exact roll-through height. There's no issue with the threshold being inaccessible anymore on this building. You come in to the lower floor and there's multiple conference rooms of different sizes. Large conference room at the end of the hallway. These are supported on either side by storage rooms and restrooms on this floor as well. And there's also smaller offices that can also be around this building as well, such as an office room here. And some of the other conference rooms could eventually, if more office space is needed, be transformed into offices again in the future. The first and second floor is connected through a staircase at the front over here on the right as soon as you walk in, and also a new Lula lift, limited use lift in the back of the building that would bring you up to the second floor. On the second floor, there's this, oh, sorry about that. There's a gallery space on the right side here where people who are no longer in the hearing room during meetings can flow out to, so conversation can continue and the meeting inside can also continue without being disrupted. It's also a gathering space where people can come upstairs. Even if this room is locked, there's room up here for just a lobby space or galleries in the future. The restroom here has been grown to make sure that it's ADA accessible and also takes that door off of the main area in the hearing room and brings it around the corner for more privacy and also to separate it from this area a little bit more. And that's pretty much the only changes that have happened on this upper floor. So this is what the meeting house looks like currently, where there's a lip here and a step up going into the building itself. Regrading that and hoping and making sure that it's not too steep to require handrails. This is just a view of what it could look like after. And so all this would be relatively similar. It would just be accessible. And moving forward, I believe we have cost implications.
First, we're going to talk about, oh, here's cost. Okay. Thanks. The cost estimate was a draft version was issued on Friday. Over the weekend, we and our engineering friends reviewed the cost estimate. Corrections were sent in to the estimator, and a final edition was published really just a few hours ago. And so here are the costs. Trade costs, and that means, you know, the real cost of construction, labor and materials for renovating the meeting house, 2.6 million, the Ritter Memorial, 2 million, the town hall, about 7 million, and then site work improvements, about 1.7. That's a total of 13.3 in trade costs. Thinking about contingencies, those are design contingencies because we're at such an early stage in design. There's more to be learned, so we need to account for what we don't know yet. There's also a escalation for 1 year of anticipated construction inflation that was set at 3%. That's the current rate of construction inflation, which is cooled off from where it was a few years ago, which is good. So a total estimated construction cost of $17.8 million. Total project cost, including fees for design and also owner's project manager, I think as required by Massachusetts law, you'd need to have an OPM, would bring it up to approximately, whether we use a 20% or 25% margin there, into the range of $21 to $22 million total project costs. There are some alternates that are not included in that line, and they are 1, 2, and 3 below. The photovoltaic canopy over the parking lot is estimated to be about $1.8 million. We are not trying to estimate any rebates that you might be entitled to through the 2022 IRA legislation, which reimburses towns and public agencies for photovoltaic work. That may or may not be in place when we get around to it, given the new administration. Alternate number 3 would be to put a slab in the basement of the meeting house. Right now it's a sheet of plastic over dirt. So that's about $100,000. And the third alternate is to install EV chargers in the parking lot. 21 EV charges cost about $280,000. The electrical code requires that we put in the electrical rough infrastructure to accommodate those EV chargers, but not the chargers themselves. So that would be a choice by the town of Lunenburg whether or not to pay for those chargers. So that's a quick summary. There's 39 pages of detail to back this up for anybody who wants to review the cost estimate. Our cost estimator is PM&C, Peter Bradley and Amy Happ, who have done work already for the town of Lunenburg. You may know them. We use them all the time, but they are completely independent of us. They just ask for drawings and specs, and then they give us their estimate of the cost of construction. And that's what you see here. Any questions about this? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask our engineers to talk about their work. And let's start with structural engineering, if we may. Paul?
Yep.
Take it away.
Happy to. Thanks, Robert. I'm going to share my screen. Host disabled participant screen.
Yep, Paul, I'll make you a co-host.
Thanks. Yep, there we go. Okay. So you should be seeing PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. All right. All right, so thank you, everyone, for having us tonight. I'm Paul Rosenstrauss. I'm joined by Dominic Kelly, who's here next to me. He's here.
Hi.
We couldn't get our conference room to join the meeting also, so we're sharing my laptop. We're the structural engineers for the project. And of course, by now you're familiar with the 3 different buildings that we'll be talking about. We'll start off with the meeting house. This is where the majority of the existing construction is going to happen. And I'll say at the outset, we've got a bunch of slides. I'm just going to move through as quickly as possible in the interest of time. So we understand that your priorities for the meeting hall are the squeaky floor and leveling the existing floor. And when we were out there, we could certainly feel that. So we will address that. The columns in the basement bear on that, the existing grade with no slab. So we will offer a solution to that. We'll talk about the front accessibility that Taylor and Burns addressed, some repairs to the ramp, the implications of the programmatic improvements within the building, and then some of the attic repairs that we will do in the back of house or above house, as it were, space. Starting off, you're familiar with the basement. There are a lot of columns down there. And so to address the leveling, we have a plan to accomplish that. What we'll do, we'll begin with a survey to understand the variability of the existing column lengths in the basement, and we'll establish a baseline for where the tops of the columns at the girders, a baseline for where those need to be. So to do that, we'll do the survey. We will jack the girders up to free the columns, and then you can remove the columns one at a time. You can install an end cap on the bottom of the columns so that the bottoms are protected against moisture infiltration. And then you can replace the column and put a shim in to establish the proper height, remove the jacks, move to the next column, and work your way around the basement until we achieve levelness at the tops of each of the existing posts. Once you achieve that, you can address the condition in the middle of the column bays because the existing timber joists have sagged variably throughout the space. So to do that, you would do a similar project. You would put an intermediate beam across the joists. You can see that in the sketch here. You would jack the floor up again and then put timber posts to hold those beams in place. That's one of the strategies that we plan to employ. We also, as part of the renovations, we're creating meeting space, those conference rooms on the first floor, and that constitutes a change in occupancy. So we will likely have to sister or strengthen existing framing in order to meet those higher load requirements. The assembly loading is 100 pounds per square foot loading requirement. So these two strategies together will be employed throughout the basement selectively in order to achieve the levelness and the higher load capacity. And then at the end, you won't need to shim your desk space that we notice throughout the building. Robert talked about the entry regrading. That will require some additional concrete to be placed in the entry that will add some amount of additional load. To carry that additional load, we will likely need to do some localized strengthening in the entrance. So adding timber, adding wood sisters, so additional framing adjacent to the existing to carry the additional load. Just very quickly, we noticed there was a damaged post at the accessibility ramp. And then once the interior demolition is underway, some partition walls on level 1 that go from level 1 up to level 2 are being removed. During the demolition process, we will make some exploratory openings to understand which of these walls are bearing walls to support the meeting hall above. We know that some of them are because it's a large space, so the timber framing at level 2 needs to be supported. In order to remove these walls, we will put in new timber girders and new timber posts in order to accommodate the new program. We can also address your squeaky floors at this time. The existing finishes on the floors will be removed, and we will nail the timber planking to the joists below to address the squeakiness. Up in the attic, some structural repairs. There's a missing member in one of the trusses, and there's some deterioration on some of the select posts and beams. Moving on to the Ritter. The Ritter renovations are pretty straightforward. In the basement, we're looking to support the program by taking out 2 partition walls. There's one here and there's one here. This wall is a partition wall. It is not a it's not a bearing wall based on our observations. The wall to the left is likely participating in some level of bearing, and we'll need to observe that as the design progresses so that we're not affecting any posts or any of the other structure. Up in the attic, we did observe some evidence of moisture staining, so we will require treatment of these stained areas with a product that will help protect the existing timbers. And then the bottom right, actually going back to the basement, you can see there's the ghost of an old stair that used to be present down there. And these 2 members here are old headers. So we'll investigate this area so that we can accommodate the program when this wall eventually comes out. Moving to the new construction, there's 2 main areas. There's the structural system itself, and then there's the impact that the foundation will have on the surrounding area. First, the new construction does get very close to the road, and our understanding is that the basement for this structure is pretty deep, so you won't be able to slope the ground surface to access the pit during construction, because that sloped surface would impede on the road. So we will have a temporary excavation support to achieve that. Similarly, adjacent to the Ritter, we are going deeper than the existing foundations, and that will require underpinning to the existing Ritter so that we can construct the new foundations. The structural system itself is pretty straightforward, very common for this kind of construction, and especially for this area. It'll be a steel building frame with a concrete composite deck. There will be a concrete foundation. We will use a steel braced frame for stability. The elevator pit will be concrete. We will have masonry shaft walls. And then to save some money, the roof can be steel joists with steel decking. And thank you. We're really looking forward to this project.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, happy to take any questions or wait till the end.
Are there any questions from any members at this time? Or the public? All right, seeing none. Robert, if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Bill Scanlon to talk about the engineered systems in the building.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Bill, do you need a screen share as well?
Oh, sorry, say that again.
Bill, do you need a screen share as well?
No, actually mine's a little shorter and sweeter. I would say we have a report that we provided to Robert, but we're just going to describe what we've seen and then we'll take it from there. But so both buildings apply for the existing town hall and the Ritter building in addition. So the MEP systems are past their useful life, so they'll be removed. We're suggesting new fire protection, so new distribution, new sprinkler heads as required by code. Plumbing will be all new fixtures, new piping, hot and colds and waste is all new, so throughout. Heating and cooling will be provided through a high efficiency heat pump system with fan coils, and then energy recovery for ventilation. And the last part, again, short and sweet, is our electrical. So new services will be required for both buildings. So new panels, wiring, devices, lighting, fire alarm. So really all the systems within these buildings will be new. As Robert said, it is accounted for in that cost estimate earlier. So that's kind of what we wanted to report tonight, and kind of short and sweet.
I have
All
a
right.
question, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Greg, two parts here, actually. I need to step away for about a minute. If I can pass off chair to you, and then I will come right back.
Sure.
Thank you.
I was wondering, are you planning on three-phase power for either building?
And so, yes, yeah, we would recommend three-phase power
For
typically. Yeah.
Both buildings?
Yeah, and again, so back to Robert had mentioned the car charging stations, the HVAC equipment will be commercial grade, which really pushes us into that three-phase power. So yeah,
Yes.
Also elevators.
No, that's what I
elevators.
was wondering, the
Yeah,
elevator.
yeah,
and the
another one.
retail.
Yeah.
So, is there any backup power of any kind required or planned into standby power for any of these buildings?
So Robert, I know we talked about a generator and you know how far that piece is taken or the generator sized for. That's something that we'll further develop.
Yeah, it really it's a question that goes back to the town of Lunenburg. If you consider this to be a first responder type facility, akin to a police station or fire station, you would need to put emergency generator power available. If it were to be designated as a warming center, a place where people could go in the event of a power outage from a northeaster or a hurricane or something like that, so you could you know, a place to go charge your phone and get warm, whatever, then a generator would be required for that. But
Okay.
Unless you want that, there's nothing that would, they're essentially office buildings, actually, when you strip
Okay.
away the civic functions and just really look at what it is that happens in these buildings. They're small office buildings, and there is no need per code to make them to put them on generators unless you want to.
Yeah.
A generator would be problematic at either site because generators can't be parked up tight next to an existing building. They need distance around them for service and for ventilation. They need to be test run periodically, like every month or so, which produces noise and exhaust fumes.
Weekly. It's weekly.
So it's not a light lift. You know, you'd really need to carve out space on the site plan to accommodate a generator. And
Yeah, and
up with
just to be
it.
clear, I wasn't suggesting that we put one in. I was just wondering if you had planned one in, because I know all those things, and I guess I was hopeful that we would not need one. I didn't know if an elevator required standby power or not. Is that, no, you don't need to provide a secondary source of power for it when you have an elevator? Is that true?
No, you don't need it unless it's like a building taller than 6 stories, I think.
Ah, okay.
If you know any first responders, if they've got a person on a gurney on a second floor, they're not going to take the elevator. They don't want to get stuck in there with a gurney. They'll take the stairs.
Yeah, okay. So we've got generator now at our senior center, and we also have it at the one or both of the schools, I think. Two of the schools, I think. So I'm not suggesting we need another shelter, but I just was wondering if it had been what the status was on it. So thank you, appreciate it.
Does the town have a disaster response center identified?
I think, Michael Ray, you might be able to do it, but I think it's Turkey Hill and now possibly the senior center, although I don't think that the senior center has showers. But
I believe the answer, and it could have changed, but I believe the answer is Turkey Hill and the Adult Activity Center. that provides that function. And Greg, we had looked in, I did bring this up to the architectural team previously about, if we were to put a generator on site, where would it go? I know that Robert mentioned the same things to me that he mentioned this evening. And I think the only other consideration is we have a residence that's pretty close by.
Yeah.
And no doubt, if anyone's heard a generator get exercised, you can hear them from across the street, down the street.
Yeah.
They're loud. It's a diesel
Yeah.
engine that's running full throttle, and it can be quite disruptive to the neighborhood. So,
Yeah, and there's probably not a great place to put it on the back of the building, to be quite honest with you. So
There
then
isn't.
you're looking at putting a big, ugly, brown or green or
Yellow.
yellow generator, depending on
Yeah.
which brand you like, on the front of the thing, and that sounds dreadful. I just was wondering if we needed one, so I appreciate the clarification. Thanks.
Does the town not have a disaster response plan that says this is where you go, town manager, police chief, fire chief? I would
I
think.
think they do. I think it's Turkey Hill Middle School or the Turkey Hill School and possibly now the senior center.
And not the public safety building.
Very well, it could be, but
so
I know that when we had the ice storm, folks were at Turkey Hill.
Okay, that's interesting. I would have thought that it would have been at the public safety building. I'm assuming they have a generator.
I think that in the event of a major power outage, the last thing the fire department wants are all the people of Lunenburg coming into the firehouse, because, then they can't quickly respond to things. They've got too many people. I think they would want that elsewhere.
I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of not necessarily a power outage, but something that would be more dramatic, And I think it's interesting that the town doesn't have it designated, like have a plan.
I think they do.
Yeah, you're thinking it's Turkey Hill then,
I think
right?
they do. I'm not an expert on it, but I do believe that they do have one.
yeah, and I don't want to I know that during the pandemic, we did receive some funds in the first round, not from the ARPA funds, but in the first round to really update that disaster kind of preparedness response plan that we have. I'm not on that team. I don't know what the answer is. I know that that's generally kind of the full-time staff that manage that. So I don't have an answer for you, Tony, but what we identified during that time was that most staff can work from home. And if they're assigned to town hall or the Ritter building, many functions that happened in those offices went remote fully for those about 4 months or so, maybe even longer. And so town hall is kind of designated, and I don't want to get outside of myself, but there's not a designation at this time for this building to need to be open to the public in the event of a crisis type situation, that the public safety building would remain online, and the library and this adult activity center can provide heating and warming centers, but there's not a requirement for this building to do that. And the public safety building, it's for public safety personnel. I don't believe that they can segregate their building and provide space for the public. But I don't want to get too off track here.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, and Christina, you can just jump in. You don't have to raise your hand.
So back to the generator, which again, I understand that's a huge expense, but has the school committee commented because of the fact, and I think Greg kind of asked it, but I'm not sure of the answer, because of the Lulu lift and the elevator and the people in some of those programs, if they were to lose power, how would they exit the building safely?
Yeah, I don't think we've given that question directly to them, although I will tell you the question that I did have for the superintendent was, and I need to say this as slowly as I can so that way I say it as respectfully as I can. I had a question for her about the accommodations that were needed for the students who are part of the ACE program. And if she had an indication of approximately how many of those students are wheelchair bound, and what their history is of having students with those type of mobility concerns are. And what I got from the superintendent was that most that they don't have a history of students in ACE having those kinds of mobility concerns, that the population that they're serving has largely behavioral disorders such as autism, delayed developmentally delayed individuals that may need supplemental life skills types training, but not kids who or young adults who are wheelchair bound or with significant mobility concerns. So again, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible as I try to explain something that is very far outside of my normal wheelhouse. But my understanding is that everything's going to need to be accommodated in some kind of way. And I think that one of the advantages of the lower level of Ritter building with this kind of plan is that there is a way without hitting an elevator to get back to grade by going through the connector, and that would land you outside at grade level without having to hit an elevator. And I think the only concern would be if someone was on the second floor, how do they get down to that first floor? Something that I have mentioned in one-to-ones with Mr. Taylor and his team is that, one of the advantages of if we go the route of solar is that we can also create a solar bank, essentially a battery bank, and that can function in many ways like a generator would, in which we could put certain critical systems, kind of give them priority in that battery bank. And that way, we can kind of resolve some of these issues as we're discussing them today, without the need to have a generator that's exercised every week at an exorbitant cost to maintain and replace.
Okay. And then my second question, we'll follow up with that, is our friends at PAC, has this been discussed with them? Because I know they have very big plans, and I wouldn't be shocked in the near future if that's something that they wanted to add or include, but I'm assuming if they do at that point, it is their expense, not one that would be managed by the town.
I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Okay, because I know they had when we started, they had a very long list of requirements that have come down, and I might be wrong, but I thought a generator was part of their initial plan. So I just didn't know if they knew where we stood on that as of today. It sounds like not included.
We can certainly talk through this point in a little more detail, if the members think that, as we kind of move beyond this point. Well, I wouldn't say talk about it right now, but maybe right after this meeting with the team, I think we can quickly get a price for what a generator goes for, and kind of have that as an alternate if needed. But I do want to make sure that I don't want to say overthink, because I think that this process is supposed to be encouraging us to think outside the box and think about all probabilities and possibilities. What I would say is that, Town Hall currently doesn't have a elevator, or does have a lift. The same thing happens in the Ritter building. We are aware of people getting entrapped while the power was on, but I don't know if we have any awareness of a circumstance in which the power was off, and we ran into these issues. Certainly worth looking at in terms of return on investment, or is it worth pursuing? Tony.
I thought that the current plan is for the school folks to temporarily relocate to Turkey Hill. And Laura, I see you're online with us, so maybe you can say that that's a true statement or a false statement. But if they do go to Turkey Hill on an interim basis, then they would have those types of facilities, because there is a generator at Turkey Hill.
Hi, sorry, I was doing dinner too, so I was only half. Yes, we are relocating to Turkey Hill temporarily until Town Hall is built, and there is, I believe, a generator at Turkey Hill.
There is a great big one.
Yep, and it is the town's emergency shelter. So What are you asking?
You know, the ACE program in September is going to be operating at Turkey Hill, correct?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the temporary plan until we can move into the town hall space.
Okay. I think we were with Bill still here. So Bill, we can kind of come back to
Yeah,
the-
no,
some of the
I think I was towards the end, so it was really just questions. If there were any other MEP or FP questions that anyone had.
I had one other one, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Is there any special treatment or anything programmed in for the basement space of the new town hall relative to humidity control, being that it would be below grade?
Yeah, and so that's something we'll talk about with Robert and team. So usually we talk about humidity, especially basements. We love to see a good vapor barrier, right? Which should keep that moisture out. But that being said, though, if it is problematic, we could put dehumidification down there. So whether it's integral to our HVAC system, or if we have a standalone dehumidifier that drains automatically, that's automated, would be what we would suggest or look into. So those are things we'll a little bit more detailed once we get further down the road.
I can tell you that the cost estimate includes a robust waterproofing system for the basement of the new town hall. So it will not be gathering moisture from the surrounding earth due to its basement location. It should be dry as a bone down there. If you want to store paper, for example.
Yeah, that's it. So there was reason for asking was there's really two things in my mind. We heard directly from Mr. Walker that putting PAC in the basement, while it addresses some of their concerns with isolation and the space in a lot of ways would work, they're most concerned about their equipment that's very sensitive to humidity. Not only does it need maybe a low humidity, it needs a constant humidity. Like the change really causes it to be problematic. So I was thinking about that, and then also over time, the natural use for basements is for additional storage of records and things that you're not going to use every day. And I have some professional records in a back room that doesn't have any dehumidification, and I can tell you it doesn't do well. It doesn't do nice things to the paper. So, but no, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. I'm glad to see we have that programmed in.
I think Bill can address all those issues.
Yeah. And we talk about, right now there is no humidity outside. So besides good ventilation through an energy recovery, if you have critical spaces, we can look at a humidifier and a dehumidifier that'll hold us really in a tight, kind of relative humidity. So yeah,
I think that'll be important for PAC.
Okay,
for sure.
One question that I had, Bill, is were you able to, and I think this is going to come up from the public on our end, which is how much energy do we expect this building to utilize in the course of a month? And I think the next question is how much solar energy can those panels potentially generate in the course of a month? And I know that, that's typically a question that's asked once you have construction documents, actual solar panels picked out, whether they're 400 kilowatts or 325 or what they're going to be. And once you have a better idea of what's going to be pulling for energy in the building. But I just wanted to, one of the things, and if I can just preface this a little bit more, one of the issues that we have in Lunenburg is that we're already on a, what is it called, where our municipality goes out and secures the price for the electricity. and then we are left paying, you know, the distribution. And what we find in our town is that the cost of electricity is like a third of the cost of the distribution of that electricity. And so all of us are paying a lot of money, and it's not because our electricity is costing more, it's actually costing less. It's because the Unitil's distribution rates are so ridiculous.
So what I would say is we would start with high efficiency systems. So we're talking about heat pumps, they're variable speed, very comfortable type systems that are, that operate within our temperatures. So whether it's 0 degrees out or 90 degrees out, these systems will give you heating, cooling year round. And again, the compressors, the fans, they modulate up and down. So again, they're high efficiency. We can look at, we haven't run an energy model yet and, performance with consumption. Those are things we can get further or find out once we get a little bit further down the road. And the same thing, once we develop a square foot for solar, usually there's a solar consultant, but we could say, this typically gets us so many, KW, it'll offset so much cost just on annual predictions. But it really depends on how many square feet, and where those panels fit. So a little early, but what I would say is high efficiency and solar will be combined to help us reduce the overall utilities that we'll have for these buildings.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Taylor, turning back to you.
Thank you, Michael Ray. We've ran through our slides. We've talked through all the points of site plan, building plan, architecture, structural engineering, engineered systems. We're happy to go back to any of those if anybody wants to revisit that stuff. It's this is a preview of what we'll be doing tomorrow night for the select board. Basically the same presentation. If anybody has any guidance about that.
Yeah, so I want to first, Robert, go to anyone from the public that's with us this evening, and see if they have any questions or comments. All right, if at any point anyone from the public does, feel free to raise your hand and just jump in here. Oh, Ms. Lockwood.
Hi, on the Lockwood 91 Main Street. And I know we're trying to keep the cost down, but the parking, it doesn't feel like we're adding a lot of parking. I think you guys talked about 70 spots. Is that what it is on the school property? I just feel like with the lack of parking that we have in town center, even municipal parking, it would be great if we could add, excess parking so that it's really serving the entire town center.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you that on School Street, immediately adjacent to the new town hall, there will be a total of 7 spaces. 4 of those will be handicap spots and 3 will be like short, like 15-minute parking spaces. That's right next to the building on School Street. And then next to the Ritter Memorial off of Lancaster, there's a small parking lot, and that will have, I think, 1 handicap or 2 handicap spaces and 3 short-term parking spaces. The main lot, all the way down toward the end of School Street, can accommodate 80 parking spaces. So we're talking about a total of 92 parking spaces when the project is complete. Right now, I think the Ritter Memorial parking lot accommodates maybe half a dozen cars, none of them designated a handicap as far as I know. So this is almost a 20-fold increase in parking for the Lunenburg Village Center.
Right, but it's serving this building. It's going to serve the meeting hall, and and it needs to now include the schools staff that's going to come. So I think, although it's, you know, that many more, how many more folds, I don't think it's enough for all these buildings and the activities that are going to happen. And I don't have a number with it. I just know there is no parking in town center at all right now, and we are adding more space and more people, more activities with the schools, and you know, and I don't know how, I don't know if we're accounting, but that's one thought. The other question that I have is, what is the basement of the current town hall? What is the foundation built on? Is it a field stones?
The old town hall has a, it's covered, the basement is covered with plastic, and underneath the plastic is some form of dirt or gravel or sand, something like that. It's very soft underfoot.
Right, but
And
the foundation, the, you know, the structure itself.
oh, we believe that the perimeter walls and those white painted column posts are on some kind of granite block foundations. But we have
So
not
the,
done ground penetrating radar to determine
right,
exactly how deep or how heavy.
so the perimeter walls of the basement is granite
Yeah.
blocks? Okay. So one, you know, I have an old home, and whenever I use and I have field stones, um, the entire length of my property. One thing that it doesn't work for field stones, any kind of stones, it lets moisture in. And then, you know, so it's never recommended to fully finish your floor, because the moisture is going to come in and you need the moisture to go somewhere. So I hope, as you guys plan for a slab on that basement, that you plan at least you know, like in the basement of my barn, we have at least 2 feet that is still dirt, so that the moisture that comes in from the perimeter walls, granite, it just goes straight back to the ground. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with a lot of moisture trapped inside the basement.
Yeah, I think Anna, that maybe it's in one of the photos that was shared. I believe it was shared by Paul. And you can see in that there's several years back. I don't know, Paul, if you're able to pull this up and share it, that shows the coating on top of the fieldstone in the basement, if you're able to speak to that at all.
Yeah, happy to. Just give me a second. Go here. Current slide. Oh, go back a little bit.
Yeah, you can somewhat see it
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
Dominic and I were just chatting, and we agree this is likely a fieldstone foundation with a coating that prevents us from really seeing it. But yeah, these systems do have moisture infiltration, and having a leave out area that Anna has mentioned is definitely a strategy that can help mitigate the moisture infiltration.
So is there on the current plan that you propose, is there for pouring the slab, did you have a plan for it, or what were you thinking?
It's too early for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a way
Sure.
to get more space for the town if they chose.
Okay, no, that's good. That was only my concern, because the new meeting hall is a very old building, and trapping moisture into a basement, it's a terrible idea. So even putting cement and covering the fieldstone is also not a good idea. So generally speaking. All right, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? I saw Christina's hand up at one point in time. All right. Okay, any final thoughts from the committee?
Sorry, so back to kind of Anna's question, I think It was a good question. When we look at the parking that was added, I remember in previous discussions, we talked about the steep drop off. And when we talk about like site work costs, when the parking was designed, how much buildup? Or are they just basically saying the parking's where the ground is most level, so we don't have to deal with building up area to be able to have that much parking?
Hey,
I don't know if that makes sense.
can I pipe in here a little?
Of course.
Yeah.
I took a little look at this a couple weeks back, and I think the 30 School Street parking, the 30 School Street property can accommodate a pretty significant amount of parking if we wanted to. It can accommodate much more than 80 parking spaces if we would like it to. Whether or not we want to do that is another question. I think that adding 80 parking spaces in the center of town, no disrespect to Anna, is a significant improvement in town. It's not like we're going to eliminate any parking spaces in town. It's going to be a complete add to the project. And actually it's 92 spaces, almost 100 spaces. We may find when we advance this to the next step, that we want that to be, 100 or 120 parking spaces. I guess I'm here to tell you, based on my, albeit rudimentary analysis, but I think we can accommodate more than 80 spaces on that site if we want to. So I think that, and I think we have a lot of flexibility because we could plan the parking lot for this project to meet the needs of this project now and program in future expansion if we want to. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of flexibility with the plan that is in place. I can't disagree. We need parking in the center of town. I just think that 80 spaces is a lot. I think that folks will be pleased with how much that is, over there.
No, and I agree, but I think people are gonna see that big lot of land and be like, why didn't you add more? Not ever stepping foot on it and realizing how quickly you get halfway through the property and it drops off to this big steep slope. So the buildup to add those would be a lot. And you have to remember, there's somebody right there. Like there's properties abutting it on either side. Like,
Yeah,
that's
why I'd argue you don't want to pave the whole thing.
No, I think the 80s,
yeah,
it's respectful. And if we need to do something, we can make a green space there. There's other things we can do besides adding parking for something that would be rarely used. So that's why I was wondering, just out of curiosity, the number 80, was that something we gave and I forgot, or if it was because they looked at that lot and they were like, without doing a ton of build up around it and a ton of maintenance, like clean out 80 easily, I guess.
And we do have a head count for the staff assigned. It's not on the top of my head, but I know it was in several spreadsheets that I sent over to the architectural team, and I think it's about somewhere between 35 and 40. So even with this parking calculation, I think that it would be challenging for it to be full, and it would probably help out take some of that parking away from the town hall area and put it across the street. Ms. Lockwood?
Yeah, so my only final comment about the parking lot, and I hear what Greg said, and I appreciate the comments. There is no disrespect in having different perspective, Greg. What I worry is, with the go, I know this committee has been very mindful about the cost of this construction project. But in this, are we making, with a small expansion, we can add another 20, 30 spaces, 40, I don't know, and create enough parking that, meets the current needs and, maybe some future needs. The town center is getting busy. And my concern is we're going to build it and then we're going to realize, an extra 20 space would have been great. And there would have been that much more in the total cost. And now we're going to need a project in town, a capital plan. And we all seen what it has taken to build a parking lot for the senior center, which we haven't built one. So it's just, that is my concern is, I think parking is one thing that if we can build it for the, to accommodate more, because it is likely going to put more people in that building. I think, Michael Ray, you have said that, that is a, I think it's a 20% or 30% more physical space here than there was in the current space that we're using. And that's with a mindset that we're likely going to hire more people and the need is going to be there and there'll be some extra space that we can work. So we got to think about that in parking as well. So I just urge the commission to see if, as you guys go into the next phase of design and development, if there is a way to increase the number of parking spots and stay within the guidelines and boundaries that you guys just mentioned, neighbors and usage of the property and so forth. That's all. Thank you.
One last comment about that is, we thought that we could accommodate those 80 spaces pretty, I wouldn't say effortlessly, but straightforward parking lot construction without a lot of regrading. To get more spaces, you were going to talk about more earth moving, they become more expensive. The marginal increases in parking come at a higher cost per space. So you have to look at that as well. The next 10 spaces are going to cost a lot more than the first 10 spaces.
Yep. All right, Mr. Roy?
Yeah, I had a question for Mr. Blatt now that he's joined the call. Dave, is there opportunity? I don't know if you were here when they were presenting the cost estimate, but they have the solar canopies as an alternate of about a $1.7 million add to the project. Do you have any, and if the answer is no, or you have to get back to us, that's fine, but do you have any visibility on current green initiatives in your capacity as the green committee chairperson that could maybe that we could use leverage to help with some of that?
So, Mr. Roy, appreciate it. I apologize for joining late. I actually was having my Green Committee meeting at 5:30, so I couldn't join both meetings at once. So there is, right now, we're struggling, and there is a grant coming up that would allow for a municipal energy helper to help us put together a project and identify and put together a project. And the idea, one of the projects that they would do would be a community solar. So I think I would put this under the heading of a community solar. And so there is possibility for grants for community solar. It's more difficult. I'd say our possibility for grants would be better in the use of variable speed mini splits, or the air handlers. That would be easier to get as far as the green.
Can we get credit for those if we're programming into a new building? Like, because I think that the MEP consultant indicated that that's what they're programming in is variable frequency drive HVAC equipment.
Yes, so VRF is what we're suggesting, heat pump systems with modulating compressors. Anyways, not.
So is there an opportunity to get rebates on some of that stuff if we program it into the building, Dave?
There are programs, Mass Save and whatnot, but that again, we can work with the town on and try to.
So there is on top of the Mass Save, there is a possibility as we look at changing buildings and changing building use to actually apply for a green grant to help offset that cost additionally. We're doing that for the schools right now, for the school's second phase of the elementary school project.
So, and none of those grant opportunities are programmed into this estimate. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. Yeah, okay. We did not try to understand any of that mathematics.
Yeah.
This is
understood. Yeah, and not that I'm suggesting that you should have. I'm just trying to make sure that the public understands that there might be some opportunities here as we progress for rebates and programs that we might be able to we'll look for if we can.
And And by the way, there is also right now a grant for EV chargers too, going out. We just haven't been able to identify any place in town to put them.
Did one other thing, Mr. Chair, sorry to take up I feel like I'm monopolizing the meeting.
Nope.
Did you say, Mr. Taylor, that I think you programmed in, oh yeah, here it is. That's 21 units, but just the wiring only?
Yeah, the electrical infrastructure,
Okay.
meaning the conduits and everything going back to the building
Yeah.
is built in. That's baked in as required by the new building code. The
Okay, so-
chargers are not.
So the 21 units though, that's driven by the building code or as a fraction of the number of spaces we have, or is that how that works, or?
That's right. Bill, do you know
Yeah,
the
no,
chapter and verse it comes from?
Yeah, and we can dig that up and send it to you. I don't have that in front of me. It's
I
like one
believe
of our-
you. I just wanted to know that it was driven by the
Yeah,
21
yeah.
was there's
Yes,
method to the
exactly.
madness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
think-
it's the 10th edition of the Massachusetts Building
Right.
Code.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
electrical code that's part of that
Yeah.
requires
So-
something like 25% of your parking spaces be EV chargers.
Okay. So it's the 21. I guess what I was driving at is the 21 is not arbitrary.
No.
It's code it's code
Yep.
driven. Okay.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
Which
And if we put more parking spaces in, that number goes up.
Correct.
So I think to drill down on this one of just a little bit more, because I think you know, on the surface it sounds a little absurd that I don't know if 1 in 4 homes has an electric vehicle. So I mean, it's a little, it's a very I understand the theory behind some of this is if you build it, they will come, right? But it is but I just want to explain this. So just saying this, everything that's been said it's probably the same way, is that in the pricing that we have for town hall, the $6.9 million price tag, that baked into this price is the current electrical code requirements, which are that if we have a parking lot with 80 or 92 spaces between all of them, that we need to have a certain percentage of that designated for EV chargers, but not just designated, that we need to rough in. That means, build in electrically, and maybe that's not the right phrase or word, but have all the electrical wires that go to where a charging station should be. We need to do that 21 times, regardless of whether or not we actually put in a charging station. And so the cost of the charging station then is listed here separately, because as Mr. Blatt said, there are grants for this, or it can be funded separately. But no matter what, even if we don't pursue these 21 charging stations, that in order to build a parking lot with 80 parking spaces, we have to have all the wiring ready to go just so we can plug and play essentially these 21 EV chargers. Am I saying this in a correct and kind of lay term?
Let me just make a couple of edits to your statement.
Okay.
It's in the site work number, not the town hall number. So
Got
it's
it.
part of the 1.657. And I think the number would include empty conduit pipe and electrical handholds and things like that, but no copper wiring.
Okay, so all the conduit.
Yeah.
Make it happen. So basically pulling string.
Correct. Yep.
While we have this up, can I ask another question, which may or may not be able to be answered today? So now the PAC is in the basement of the new town hall, and they have their own special design requirements. I saw last meeting, they were asking about the floor and what we're going to put down. Does the cost of the town hall include doing anything downstairs, or are we leaving it bare for them to finish on their own?
It's pretty much a bare basement, concrete floor. There would be gypsum walls that provide some insulation between the foundation wall and the interior space. There would be a ceiling overhead, but it would be quite minimal.
Okay. So most of the cost to finish that space would be required of PAC, not of the town of Lunenburg taxpayers.
Yes, well, I'm not sure about your town accounting of those charges, but this estimate shows a bare bones basement.
Okay, which is, I think, what we had asked for, was that
Yeah.
PAC's coming with some funding to be able to outfit their space. I gather that's what you're getting at, Christina?
Yes, just wanted to confirm that because I know that was a big point of contention last town meeting, and I could see it coming up again tomorrow as a cost savings tactic that's already been taken.
All right, any final questions, comments, thoughts for the team? If I may ask Stephen to go backwards to some renderings, and if you wouldn't mind, just going backwards to show us some of a couple of these, the interior perspectives. Oh, look at that! You had the that was pretty cool seeing the what are those called? When they hang down. That's it. That's it. Planning
Bunting,
for our
bunting.
300th anniversary here. All right, which we are coming up on in 3 years. Hopefully this building will be up and standing for it. All right, if you wouldn't mind going to an interior perspective here. So I just wanted to comment on this. So one of the things that I really like about these renderings, and I think Marley, you work on these interiors, is that I really appreciate the natural light. I think that, you know, when you build a building like this, even though it's, you know, as we said, essentially office space, that, you know, there's some texture, there's some character to the space itself. So, you know, where I think we see this young lady kind of midway down the hallway with what looks like some kind of bag or something over her shoulder. And then we see that gentleman that's looking like he's walking toward us. That gentleman straight down is at the town clerk's office. And right across the hall from him, we can't really see it because it's right behind the assessors. But what I'm getting at is that you walk in the front door of the building and you can see straight through of where you need to be at, that you have some natural light that comes into this space. I think that that works really, really well. And if we can go to the next slide of the upper floor. And this, I really, really like this as well. I think that, you know, when you have a hallway, and that's essentially what it is it's a hallway, but by adding in these windows, you get, you know, I think the building has a different feel, a different character, that as people come on the second floor, their first time there, they're not sure where to go, that it gives them that visibility of, oh, there's offices here. And I think it also, with flow of traffic, it stops that flow from wanting to, you know, and I would assume most people are probably coming up the center stairwell anyway, not the front door. But as people come and land off the elevator, or people come up the stairs, that you can clearly see kind of what's here. And I think that level of transparency in government, that openness, I really like the way that this was designed and the way that this plays well. And again, getting more of that natural light into the center portion of the building. You know, it really takes advantage of the fact that this building is wrapped in windows. So I just want to give Robert Taylor and his team a lot of kudos for the thought that went into not just, you know, the adjacencies and the layout and the footprint, but really, again, the texture inside the building, how it feels when you're using it, and what that message is that goes out to the general public. You know, when you think about a wall and glass, yes, glass costs more, but over a period of time, you know, it certainly becomes less to maintain. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of value here with this selection of material and this view, and certainly classier than just looking down, you know, essentially a hallway in a, you know, almost $7 million building, and you don't have a feel for what's there and you know, how it all interacts with itself. So I really, really enjoy some of these features and just the way you've kind of mapped this out for us. And I want to offer a lot of kudos to Marley and to Stephen, to Bill, Paul. I know Dominic's there off camera somewhere. You know, when we tasked essentially a 60-day project to take a lot of work that we have already done over many years and to say, can you repackage this for us? You know, we have, the space needs data. We have a lot of this information, and so can you put this in a way that makes sense? and structural, the structural work that went into town hall. I think as we use that building today, there's a lot of concerns from the staff, from others about, is the building sound? And I think to get the feedback that we received from Dominic and Paul and the team, that we can make some modifications, but essentially reuse some of our existing supports and add additional ones in. I think that that's really comforting. I think Bill, just having that level of knowledge on the MEP systems in the building, so that way, as we go into modeling, it's very important that we have a cost estimate that is as accurate as it can be. And I just want to acknowledge the hard work that has gone into us arriving at this point and what is ordinarily a very abbreviated schedule. So that way we can go to our voters better informed. We know that a lot of the structural and electrical and mechanical equipment typically happens in a construction phase. But in order for us to be able to get the funding for that, for the borrowing here, we needed to know a lot of that stuff on this front end of it. And even the level of detail on these architectural renderings, this certainly goes well beyond what most people envision to be a schematic design. And so I do want to acknowledge the hard work for Marley, the hard work for Stephen. And what people haven't seen, what's been off camera, are the check-ins that have been happening between meetings. And I'm sure Stephen's going to appreciate not getting phone calls from me every 2 days with questions and comments. But it really, you guys have been a great team to work with over these couple of months. And I just want to, again, offer you my sincerest applause, appreciation for the hard work that you guys put into making this a reality for us.
Well, thank you, Chairman Jeffries. It's heartening to get compliments in public. It's nice. And it's great to hear that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I want to appreciate your time this evening. It sounds like we're at a good stopping point, and then the committee will continue on meeting here. So tomorrow night's format is we are looking to meet tomorrow evening at the town hall at 7 p.m. This is an in-person meeting, so the appointment itself is for 7:15. You can expect that it may run a little late, and I'll tell you why. We have public comments at the beginning of every public meeting. Certainly public comments can add in some time. We have a couple of really short appointments on the agenda tomorrow, but it's our first meeting with our new town manager. And so I do expect the select board and the town manager and some members of the public to take a little bit of time in those public comments and do a little bit of a welcoming and say hello. So right now you're on the agenda for 7:15. My hunch is that we'll get to it closer to about 7:25 or so. And it is in a 45-minute time slot. I did ask the chair not to schedule it for 7:30 because that means we can't start until 7:30. And if everything goes quick tomorrow, we could be available as early as 7:15. We will look forward to you being there. Again, it's a 45-minute time slot. I'm assuming about a 20-minute presentation, 25-minute presentation. And then there will be some questions from the members of the select board as well as the public if the chair opens it up to the public at that time. All right. Well,
Great.
I think this is it meeting with us though tonight. And so we will see you tomorrow. And I've asked Robert Taylor as well. And I've asked our internal team, I would like to get feedback on what it was like to work with us. And I'd like some honest feedback about what it was like to work with us. We all think we're the best people in the world. It's probably not true. And so it would be good to get some feedback about, what was good about this process, what was not so great about this process, what we can do better next time. And I think we're just going to take it that we all went into this knowing our timeline was a little more abbreviated than what all of us are used to. So I think we already have that takeaway. But I'm interested to know, was it good for you or was it bad? But hopefully we'll get a form from Julie and I'll be able to distribute that out, Robert, to your team. And feedback is always good.
Great. Well, I'll tell you the short answer is it's been great. You guys are really good to work for. Details to follow.
All right. Any parting words from any other members of the committee before you guys drop off here? All right. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Marley. Thank you, Mr. Lauder. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon and Paul. I know you get killed all the time with that last name, but Rosenstrach. Did I get it right?
More or
Thank
less. It's okay.
you.
Thank you.
Great,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Good night.
All right, and I think I said Ms. Marley instead of Ms. Lynch, but thank you, Marley.
Thanks.
All right. So looking at the rest of our agenda here this evening, and I really wasn't blowing smoke there. There were a lot of in-between meetings, and I really think they did a really good job working with us. All right, so I wanted to discuss, next on the agenda is discuss warrant article and presentation requirements for annual town meeting. But I'd be remiss if I didn't take a serious look at and ask us to, if Mr. Scullenbrini is okay with it. Mrs. Scullenbrini, who I think we've embraced as part of the team here, it is very important in my view that we have representation from the Architectural Preservation District meeting with us throughout the process, to give us at least some informal feedback, and also to be able to take some things back to their committee and come back to us with some guidance. I think it's been fair that Mr. Scullenbrini's, many of his requests that he's made of us, I think we have voted on or not always seen eye to eye with him on. However, everyone is a valuable member of the team. And so I really want to take a couple of minutes, and I think that Mrs. Scullenbrini raised a couple of concerns to me privately and personally, and I want to just publicly agree with a couple of them, and see if we can have a path ahead here on some of this. One of the concerns that Mrs. Scullenbrini and I spoke about was the need to have the ACE program co-located with the school district offices. As an owner, I think that this is a little problematic. I think it's been problematic since we had this conversation with the school committee. They seem to be unbending, not the school committee, with the superintendent. Superintendent seemed to be unbending in the request that ACE needed to be co-located with the district. I think that there was a lot of questions that we've had about why that is necessary. The answer we were given was that the person who runs ACE is also a member of the district team. But of course, then you end up with an operational decision that has a capital impact. And the operational decision being who needs to be housed with whom, and having a significant capital impact. So I just want to acknowledge to Mrs. Scullenbrini that I agree that I think as an owner, it's not the best to have ACE in what is essentially an office complex. However, I think that in this process, although we pushed back heavily on some of the exorbitant requests, the schools seem to be unbending in that one. And I think that this committee essentially agreed to their request, even though I think we had some concerns about it. But I want to also give you the floor for any other just general thoughts that you have on this as our rep from APDC, and also as the person who's been here with us this whole time.
I actually was going to make this comment at the end, but I'll do it now. I sent a strong note of dissent to each of the select board members because I think that the project is not sellable. And we've spent an incredible amount of time. And what I don't want to do is go to town meeting and have people say that they don't want to support this project. I think that if you want to see what I sent to the select board members, feel free to email me and I'll send you the information that I shared with the select board members. I think that we have three big issues, and I identified those in the email. But I think two of the big three issues are owner issues, and I think that let me just give you, for example, we had talked in this committee a number of times about PAC. And then at the very end, 2/3 of the way through the design process, we then said, okay, we got to include PAC in this project. And the result is if you look at the drawings, we now have 1,318 square feet of space in the basement that has no intended user. And I think that those are the kinds of things that will make this project a no-go with our town citizens. So I think that it's unfortunate that we've gone as far as we have without having, I think, a sellable project. I really don't believe that when the town sees all of the details associated with this project, that it's going to sell. And that's the one thing that I want to see happen. I think that we need to have a project that will be, strongly supported by the town. I mean, we're talking about a $22 million bill. And I think that it's got to be daggone good for the town to step up and support a town hall function at the $22 million level. So if you want my note that I sent to the select board, just email me and I'll send a copy of what I sent to each of the 5 members.
Is it different than the one that you sent to me?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I mean, I
They
did
were all like I cut and paste.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I think you hit them. So, I mean, the PAC discussion, as you know, this committee did not put PAC into this phase of the project, but this committee is advisory to the select board. And the select board did add PAC into the first phase of this project. I did not vote at that meeting, as you recall. I was asking my colleagues for guidance because I saw a difference between what the committee was doing and what I understood the members would otherwise want to support. And the membership of the select board decided, with all available information, I thought it was all available, that it was a potential $2 million ad, that there would be potential negative site implications on the 30 School Street. And the select board, with that understanding, still said we need to accommodate PAC in this design process. So I agree with you on that one. But again, that was in a collaborative process, we have to work with everyone. And then one of the other things that I think the architect addressed tonight, off the whim, but probably in response to some of your comments, was about the floor elevations not being addressed by this. I think that, I think the way the architect worded it was probably a good phraseology, which is that we're dealing with a building that's 6 feet off the ground. And how do you connect into that without also building 6 feet off the ground or going underground? And I think the answer was that, we stay with the elevations in the 1960 edition essentially and stay as close to grade as possible. But I don't disagree with you on that point. And then the other comment that I think that I heard was that, that you want to see something happen here, that you want to see a project move forward. If I can ask you, Mr. Scullenberg, you have a lot of experience in historic preservation, and getting buildings, working with buildings. In terms of a community process, what do you see as needing to be done differently?
I think Carter hit it right on the money when he gave his final remarks at the last select board meeting, Michael Ray. When he talked about his grandfather's saying of if you move an inch, it's a cinch. If you want to move a yard, it's hard. And I think that that has been the biggest issue with regards to consolidating town functions into a better operating environment. And that has, I think that if there was one thing that we should have done was to really put a framework around the objective of consolidating town administrative functions into the best working space possible, rather than trying to address what are we going to do with the schools and how do we use, an existing facility. And I think that, when I look at the size of the addition and I look at how many staff members, we have in town hall, had we not included the schools, and I think it became a really big issue when we realized that we had this split level design of the existing buildings. It's like, oh my goodness, you know, now we got all these people from the schools that we're trying to put together. Had we focused on just trying to consolidate the town administrative function, I mean, you look at, well, we have a town hall. We have a town manager, an assistant town manager, and an administrative assistant on the second floor of town hall. And then we have those folks who are on the first floor of town hall. We could have easily consolidated those folks into an expanded Ritter footprint. And I think that it wouldn't have made the work associated with expanding the 65 edition that significant of a piece of work. You know, I think that that's been the problem that we've had. And once again, you know, when we go to the town meeting in May and we say to the citizens of the town, we want you to support a $22 million project, that's a yard and that's going to be hard. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we've had in trying to get town offices consolidated in a way that the town can operate most efficiently. You know, and then the schools, I don't, I think the schools have been, they could be guilty of being a bad owner, you know, and I'll say this with my son on the school committee. They needed to pay more attention to what we were doing, and they really didn't. I don't know what kind of comments you got back from the third design drawing package that you asked for comments, but I know that they're very distracted right now because they're trying to figure out how they're going to hire a new superintendent, because my son told me that. I said, did you guys look at those drawings? And from what he told me, he said no. You know, and it's like, that's exactly what we needed to have done, you know, a year ago when we started saying, hey, we're going to put the ACE program with the school superintendent in the basement of the Ritter building. No one was paying attention then. And I think that that's one of the reasons why, you know, the $22 million project is going to be a yard that's very hard to do. That's I think Michael Ray, and of course, I think that the select board should have been told flat out at that 7 January meeting, you want to kill this project? Add PAC. and that's exactly what people at town hall are going to say when we stand before them in May and say, oh, we just added another $2 million bill to the town hall addition. You know, people are not going to support that. And we've talked about that on numerous occasions as a part of this committee. So that's my 2 cents worth. A cinch, it's an inch, or an inch, it's a cinch. If it's a yard, it's hard.
Yep. Ms. Lockwood.
So I'm actually curious about Mr. Scalabrini's email and his concern, because we, you know, I don't think the APDC, the group that, you know, I am curious about his email. I don't think any of these the versions have been shown to the APDC. And I'm curious about what is he sees so flawed. I mean, right now I just heard Mr. Scalabrini speaking of very broad concerns versus specific. And you know, I'll wait to hear. I would like his email to be read in public forum. I mean, he's part of this group. You guys have made him part of the group, and you know, he didn't bring those concerns to you. He went to the select board, and I think the other members of this group should hear exactly what he wrote, and I would like to hear what he wrote.
I'll be glad to send it to you, Anna.
No, I'd like to have it read. I would like to have read in public. That's what I'm
I'll
asking.
read it in public. The other thing is, my comments are, I'm not representing the APDC with the comments that I sent to the select board.
You just send them from your town email?
No, I sent them from my personal email.
Good. I would like to, I mean, I'm just requesting that your email to be read, you know, in the public forum.
I think it would be very beneficial to this process if my email would be read. Trust me. Once again, I'm not trying to stop this project. I want this project to move forward. But am I wrong to think that, you know, we're going to get strong support from the town for a $22 million project in May? You know, when we're faced with, you know, significant fundamental funding issues for town government.
I think in that particular case, I think you're speaking from your experience. Greg, who's sitting in this board, has been part of many different building committees in town and some that have been funded. And he was part of the construction of the high school. And this is a process that we are going through. And to start saying, I don't think what you're saying is nothing but your opinion. And
That's so true, Anna. I don't debate that. But my opinion is based on experience.
well, your experience, it's not Lunenburg experience. And with all due respect of the people sitting here, I would say you have the least amount of experience within Lunenburg and Lunenburg town government. Greg has said in the TCP reuse committee, there was a town meeting warrant, and they stood up and said, we don't think we should be funded now. That, there are ways that Lunenburg town government works. And with all due respect, you're not familiar with the project, with the process that we have gone through and how we have made many successful buildings going through the process.
If I may jump in here, Ms. Lockwood, I want to just acknowledge that any registered voter in Lunenburg is certainly their opinions matter, regardless as to whether or not they've lived in Lunenburg for 1 day or 20 years. But I don't want to diminish the comments by any means that you are making, Ms. Lockwood, but I just want
I just want to comment, Mr. Chair, that was a response to him telling me that I don't have experience. Right. So just a caveat to it. He assumed to know more than I do. So I just had to explain a couple different things.
Well, I mean, I think it's totally normal for there to be in any community, varying views on where we're at. I think it's totally normal for there, I think that as a member of the select board, I mean, I'm chastised often enough for exercising my freedom of speech and the way that I say things, and I shouldn't say them a certain way, or, how dare I say them in this setting? And I mean, it's like the first right we have is the freedom of speech, but I think it's important to respect it because it does allow for there to be that dialogue that is otherwise diminished, and in the spirit of exercising freedom of speech, I don't think our town does anything with buildings unless schools are involved, period, full stop, end of story. I think that any building project that does not incorporate the school district has no chance of passing. And that's my opinion. I do think that it's vital that there is a component in this plan that is addressing the school department's needs, because I've lived in this town since I was 10 years old. I'm 42, and so it's been 32 years. And I'll tell you what I saw. I saw a very good project come about in the late 90s to solve for public safety, to solve for libraries. I'm blanking on what the third part of that was. And we said no to it. And then we spent 10 years piecemealing it at like 5 times the cost. I've seen multiple iterations of a building committee that has gone nowhere. And, and the library that we have was built for about $1 million. The public safety was somewhere close to it. And now buildings cost a lot more. I don't think that there's any path to viability if we don't have school functions involved. And that's my personal opinion. I don't necessarily agree with all the school's requests, but I do think that they are a vital part of the team. And I also recognize that we have 2 different standards here in town from my own perspective. We have the standard of the municipal employees non-school, and we have the standard of the school employees. And I think that most municipal staff would love to work in the conditions that most of the school employees work in. And I think that few school employees would ever consider the conditions that the municipal employees work in to be acceptable. And I think that in order for us to get away from this us versus them, town versus school, we're all the same community. And I think that what I really like about this project and this plan is it bridges us together, and it for once and for all resolves this divide. That whatever the condition is in one half of this building will be the condition in the other. It will be the same. And so the school district and the town offices have the same environment, the same standards. And that, I think, is progress on a very deep level. And I also, we all know that if our school system sucked, that, if it wasn't as good as it is, and I'm not saying it's great, because I know that there's many people at home who are going to say our school system has this wrong with it and that wrong with it and this wrong with it. But let's just, let's call a spade a spade. We keep landing in the top 25, 30% of the state. I want to get off my soapbox here in a second. But if our school district was in the bottom third, our home values would be down. That we would not be a community that people would want to live in. So there is a direct tie, not just to the quality of the education we're able to provide, but to everyone's asset, which are their homes for the homeowners. That the quality of the school system matters a lot. And so, and I need a doctor one day. I need a garbage man one day. I need a DPW worker one day. And schools provide the opportunity for people to engage in those careers. So again, getting off the soapbox here, I understand the challenges. From my lens, I like the project because I think it resolves a lot of these historical issues that I think we've been dealing with for many decades. Any other thoughts, comments from anyone else on this before we move down the agenda?
I'll say one thing.
Yep.
If I could. I really hope that we can come together on this and move this project forward. I think it's a very thoughtful project. I think that in any project, we ran into it with the school project. I'm sure we ran into it with the public safety building and with the primary school and with the library. There is going to be a contingency in town that is not going to think you're doing a good job or thinks that it can be done better. But the fact of the matter is we have thought about this for a long time and we've iterated it many times in different configurations. And in my view, that we've come up with a very good plan. And I think that there is a way of coming together on this thing. I hope that there's a way of coming together on this thing so we can present it to the town in a way that is positive. I can see the path forward. And I hope that we can do that. I think I'll leave it at that. I think that I was hoping that we could, I was hoping that the cost estimate was going to start with a 1. We're really close to that, guys. We're $22 million for the renovation of 2 buildings and the construction of a large addition to one of them. And the expansion of parking and what have you. I know it's a lot of money, but it breathes new life into the center of town. It gives a complete renovation to 2 historical buildings in town, and it adds real functionality, and it adds future proofing. There's an argument to be made that putting a basement on that building is the right thing to do because we get bang for our buck with extra space that we might need in the future. So, I mean, I just hope that we can look at those opportunities, and really try to come around on evangelizing this thing, because I think that we have put a lot of work into it. I think that there's always going to be some people that we're not going to make happy, but I hope we can strive as a group to come together and sell it. Thanks.
Greg, I agree that, but one thing I keep saying is that I want this to move forward. I think the one big difference between the projects that you mentioned actually, reaching fruition, like public safety, like the library, like the primary school, I think that those were successful projects with bumps and tough times associated with executing all of those. Is that the reason why this project is a challenge is because those were all single function. It was public safety. It was the Department of Public Works. It was the schools. And I think that's it's the merging of different options and different activities that creates the challenge that we have into getting this project sold to the community. When I arrived here about the time you were discussing the issues associated with TC Passios. And I think that one of the problems that really kind of tripped up that project was it was too many different things in one facility. I mean, that's my observation based on the discussions that I heard at town meetings when the project was being discussed. is that it was a little bit of, nonprofit activity. It was a little bit of schools activity. It was a little bit of town government activity. And it's that mishmash that makes it difficult to drive the project, to an ending point in successful construction activities. And I think that is, perhaps the single biggest issue that affects this project. It would be a much different project if we were just trying to consolidate town functions into the Ritter building and the 65 edition. It would absolutely be a much simpler project to sell to the public. It'd be easier for us to do that. You wouldn't have to explain things like, why is there 1,300 square feet in a basement for PACs? I think that those are the kinds of things that do bring the project, to the public's eye. It's too much of different things in one place. Let me make it perfectly clear is that I can dissent, as a town citizen, but I only want to make the dissent to make sure that we get something that the town is going to get behind and support. Once again, let me send you my email because there's more details in there as to why I think this project will be something that the town will resist. If it was just town functions, this project would have been a breeze. So
I guess I just say that if not in this building, where do the schools go? I just think that you put them out on an island and you don't.
They've already see that's already one of the big issues that we're going to face is that they're packing up and they're moving to Turkey Hill. And so they're going to be there, when we tell the public, well, we want to move them back into the Ritter complex and consolidate their operations with town government operations. And I think people are going to go, well, what's wrong with the space in the Ritter? If it was good enough for them to go there now, why don't they just stay there, fix up that area? Were you not aware of that they made that decision that they're going to move, the new superintendent, to Turkey Hill?
Oh, I think I'm aware of it, but I mean, I'm aware of it. And again, one of the things that I think I hear what you're saying, Tony, but you're hitting on a couple of things. You're hitting on the fact that the select board, well, first, the TC Passios committee, which was our initial charge, that charge was decided by a town meeting. It was voted on by town meeting. And so, I hear what you're saying, that you don't like that charge. But that charge was the consolidation of town, school, and community functions. And so, I mean, all we can do is so now that
it
charge
doesn't make a difference what I like about the charge.
No, I understand. But
it's the people that said, what are you guys doing?
That charge then changed and the select board, did change it. But I mean, again, I don't want to talk in circles, but I do recognize from my lens, I think that there's value in layers of government making decisions and other layers of government and other committees following up on those decisions. So, when, we have a select board, which is elected by the people, we know what the select board does. And the select board came up with the charge. They got that charge committed by town meeting. And then when we modified the charge, and I don't know if that second charge was confirmed by town meeting, it wasn't needed. But the select board has the authority to convene these ad hoc committees under the authority of the charter, in which they did. And so I say all the time, I always reserve the right to change my mind. And I do. But it's a little hard to, you don't like I hear what you're saying. You don't like the result that comes out of a process when the charge is essentially what you see as being flawed or that it wasn't being questioned well enough. Am I hitting that correctly?
No, I'm just pointing out to you what I have observed. I wasn't here for the other projects like the Department of Public Works, Public Safety, and the primary building. But I was, I showed up and started listening to the conversations about TC Passios. And, I think that if I'll go back to what Carter said, if you're going an inch, it's a cinch. If you're going to go a yard, it's hard. And I think that that's exactly what we're going to face with again. is that that's the reason why TC Passios was a crash and burn. Not because I think it was a bad project. That's what the town told us. That's what citizens got up and said, wow, why are we doing all this work? What do we need? What we really need to do is just put town functions in a place where they can operate more efficiently. So I'm not trying to, make things up here. I'm an observer. And I think it's a lot easier to have a single focus project, public safety, schools, so on and so forth. I think it's much easier to get those types of projects through. They are difficult to do because they cost taxpayers money. It's when you start mixing things up, I think that create the problem. Like I don't want to belate. I'm done talking. So
All right, Mr. Black.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As one of the members that has been on this committee from like day one, starting with TC Passios, I don't disagree with all comments. The idea is that I believe that the original scope of the committee was to consolidate town functions. And we can sit here and argue all night long as to what town functions mean. But anyway, I'm not here to say I'm a member of the committee because I want to be active and I want to be participating. But in the end, I'm looking at the price tag, and this one's going to be a tough one. And unfortunately for me, and I've been an advocate of this from day one, I'm not a big fan of the schools in the building, and that this would have been a simpler project. But anyway, I'd like to make a motion that we continue with the rest of the agenda and understand that we did what the Board of Selectmen asked us, and now it's up to the town to decide what they want to do.
Yeah, you don't need to make that motion, Dave. We can just go ahead and do it.
Well, please do, sir, because I'm about to lose me again.
All right, so what we have next is warrant article presentation requirements for annual town meeting. But here's realistically what we need to do. We have a meeting that ordinarily would happen on February the 17th. That is President's Day. And so we need to reschedule that meeting. Can we all look at can we all just take a look at our calendars and just see if there's another day that week that works well? 17th is a Monday, so that would potentially be the 19th. That's the first available day. Does the 19th work for others? Greg says yes. Dave says so. Tom says yes. All right. So it's looking like the 19th may work. I'll confirm it with the members who aren't here today. And then we have meetings on March 3rd, March 17th. I went ahead and put a placeholder on the warrant for a article. So for sure, at our meeting on the 17th, we need to confirm the verbiage for that article, and that is to borrow some funding. So I know that tonight we had talked about some ad alternates. We talked about different options. There's 3 different prices out here. There's a $17 million price tag. There's a $19 million price. There's a $21 million price, and there's a $22 million price. So at that meeting, I think we need to come prepared for what is it that we're going to ask the public to go forward with. And then between now, we also have some meetings coming up with the Finance Committee in which we need to present this article to the Finance Committee, and I've already asked for time on their agenda, so that is scheduled. And then next is just reaching out to Brian Leighton and confirming some of his outreach. I'm scheduled to meet with the Council of Aging at their meeting next week on the 11th. So I've already we're meeting with the Select Board tomorrow. I think the school committee has been an engaged participant in this process. And we've engaged with the town staff. And so I will follow up with Historical Commission, unless you want to do that, Mr. Scullenbrini, and then the Planning Board, and getting in front of them. So, and then Mr. Blatt, I think there's going to be a question about some of the options that grant opportunities that are going to be out there to pursue. So any kind of background research you can do on what some of those grant opportunities are, that will be helpful. So that way, as we go into town meeting, we can discuss those with the public as well.
Okay.
All right. Yep. All right, we did get some minutes emailed over to us from Mr. Leighton. I'm just gonna pull them up to get the dates on them real quick. All right, so they are for, there we go. Let me just do, all right, they were sent out to us, they're for the 6th, January the 6th, and the other date is, sorry, January the 22nd. All right, so January the 6th and January the 22nd. Have we had the opportunity to read these minutes? Okay, and are we ready to approve? All right, I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to approve the meeting minutes for January the 6th and January the 22nd.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. It's gonna be a roll call vote. Mr. Blatt.
I need to abstain. I wasn't at the meetings.
All right, I for myself, Mr. Roy,
Aye.
Mr. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Scullin-Brini.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. I will let Brian know to forward those off to the committee. All right, and then looking at the rest of our agenda, we've rescheduled. Excellent. We're meeting tomorrow night at 7:15 at the select board. I'll call for any final public comments here. Do we have any final public comments from anyone? Public, APDC, or board?
Michael, are you going to send us the latest iteration of design work that we saw tonight? Can you do that?
As soon as I get it, yes.
Okay.
They typically send it out to me after the meeting or in the morning.
Okay. Oh, and we've already got the cost estimates, so we just need the drawings.
Correct. All right, and I did distribute those cost estimates earlier this afternoon. All right. Okay, I'm gonna make the motion to adjourn. The time is now 7:49. I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is again gonna be a roll call vote. Mr. Roy,
Aye.
Mr. Blatt,
Aye.
Mr. Scullin-Brini,
Aye.
Mr. Gray,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Again, now the time is 7:50. We are now adjourned. Thank you all for joining with us. Next meeting will be Wednesday, the 19th of February, and then meeting on March the 3rd and March the 7th. Excuse me, next meeting is tomorrow night at 7:15. And then February the 19th, March the 3rd, and March the 17th. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.